Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. My name is Sarah Souza. I am the Assistant Director of International Admissions here at Duquesne University, and very excited to have my director joining us, Mike Burke. So, Mike, do you want to take over from here?
Sure, Sarah. That's why I'm here this morning. Okay, everybody. Hey, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it. Once again, my name is Mike Burke, and I'm the Director of International Student Services here at Duquesne. And today's webinar, we're going to discuss something that's very important, something we get a lot of questions about, and that's financing your education in the US. So just two things you should know just to start off is, one, higher education is excellent in the United States. I think, US diploma is still the gold standard in the world, and it's excellent. The second thing you should know is higher education is very expensive in the United States. And so when we have students writing us, we're very sympathetic to that. We understand that the cost is expensive here in the US. So let's begin by, I just want to begin by taking a quick look at cost at Duquesne University. So at the undergraduate level, when we're looking at undergraduate tuition fees and scholarships, tuition, we're looking at a little over $45,000. Housing, we're looking at almost $15,000. And for the health insurance, books and supplies, these kind of random costs, we estimate that to be about $5,400. So when we are delivering you the I-20, these costs for tuition, housing, and expenses, that is what will be listed on the I-20 in terms of total cost. So at the undergraduate level, we do scholarship between $9,000 and $26,000 a year. Our current average, the average scholarship we are giving out right now, I ran the numbers the other day, is about $22,500. So let's flip over to grads. So at grad level, grad programs vary in structure and in duration, and so do the fees. So anywhere between $15,000 and $30,000 a year for graduate programs. It really depends upon the program. For I-20 purposes, we do list the on-campus housing. However, most graduate students elect to live off campus, and I can tell you that off campus is a bit cheaper than living on campus. And then once again, we'll list for expenses the 5,400 number. And while we don't scholarship directly out of our office for grad programs, there is funding available, and I'm going to talk about that as we go through the slides. Okay, so probably the number one question we get here at Duquesne is, at least in our office, is where is my I-20? The second question we probably get most frequently is, do you have full scholarship? So my short answer is yes, but very, very, very rarely will Duquesne offer a full scholarship. And to be quite frank with you, it's usually athletes that will get full scholarships. And this is really true not only of Duquesne, but I think of most US universities. So what I would tell you is that realistically, you cannot count on Duquesne or really any other university to fully pay for your education. And so there's been a sort of a change in strategy over, during my career in international education. And what universities have changed is, let's say, imagine a university has a $100,000 scholarship. Simply the new way, instead of giving one student that $100,000, the new strategy would be to give 4 students $25,000 each. So this is sort of, this is one reason why don't we have a full scholarship? This is one reason why this change of strategy. So how rare is it to get a full scholarship in the US? As I said, it's very, very rare. In fact, less than 0.1% of students in the US receive a full scholarship. And I'm not just talking about internationals here, I'm talking about domestics as well. So both internationals and Americans, that number is 0.1%. I think there's a misunderstanding where a lot of our international applicants think Americans are going to school for free, and that is just not the case. Most American students have to get bank loans to pay for their education and are in debt when they graduate. So I can give you an example of my own daughter. When she graduated from university, she owed 57,000 US dollars. So yes, having to borrow money for university is not ideal. I think we can all agree with that, but I think you need to think of it as an investment in yourself. So back to that $57,000 that my daughter owed. I also know people that have borrowed $57,000 to buy a vehicle in the US. So I think you have to look at it once again as an investment in yourself if you're borrowing money. And then you have to think about what's that car going to be worth in 10 years, as opposed to what's going to be your return on investment with investing in yourself in a college education. I think once you come upon that realization that really it's not realistic to expect a university to fully pay for your university education or to fund your university education, then you have to ask yourself, do I have the financial capacity to pay for university in the US? This is a really difficult question, but it's one that you must ask yourself. If your answer is no, and in most cases, that will be the answer. Most people, including Americans, do not have that kind of money laying around to fully fund their education. And thus, what you have to do is you have to look at alternative sources of funding. When I tell a student we do not offer full scholarship, I follow up with one single question. That question is, what have you done to seek out funding for your college education? The answer I usually get is nothing. So I can tell you, my daughter would be very embarrassed if she knew I kept bringing her up, but my daughter had funding from 5 different sources when she went to university. And this is the way you have to think that a single source is going to fund your entire US education is not realistic. So let's look at ways that you can actually finance that education. So I think a question you have to think about first of is, what is your budget? So your budget, your personal budget can consist of how much is your family going to be able to contribute? Have you saved any money over the years to help support your education? Do you have a sponsor? A sponsor can be a relative, it can be a company, it can be a private entity that's helping you pay for your university education. Another thing is, are you able to arrange a loan? And so once we realize this budget, then we have to think of how much is the cost of attendance per year. So let's look at a little example real quick. So let's imagine, oops, I'm sorry, everybody. So let's imagine that your family is able to contribute $12,000. Let's say that you've saved $5,000. You have a sponsor that's willing to pay $5,000, and that you're able to arrange a loan for $8,000. So, but your cost of attendance is $60,000. So under this scenario, and this is just an example, so your total cost of attendance is $60,000. Based on those numbers on the previous slide, your total budget, the money that you have in hand to be able to focus towards your education, is $30,000. And so your need for funding remains at about $30,000. And then that becomes the question, how am I able to fund this additional $30,000 a year? Well, one thing I think a good place to start is you have to look in your home country. Every country in the world has some type of study abroad scholarship funding. And you're going to have to look at your own local government, and you're going to have to see is this, what is available to me within my own country. You also might want to look at businesses who often sponsor students to study abroad, and investigate private lenders. So the first step is look at home, look in your own country, what is available. Second, you can look to the US. So when I say looking to the US for financial assistance, I'm not talking specifically about the university, but I'm talking about other entities within the US. So you want to maybe go to the US State Department page and their education page and look at what funding possibilities are there. You might want to look at Education USA. You should go to your local consulate or your binational centers, which are often located in libraries, and ask, educational advisors, what kind of funding is available for me as an international student? So what we do is on our website, we do list external scholarships. So these are scholarships that do not come from Duquesne, but they come from other sources. As you probably already know, if you are an accepted student, the scholarship that we issue for undergraduates is called the Lieberman Scholarship. And that is the scholarship that we have available for international students. However, on our website, as I said, if you go under costs and scholarships, you will find these are other scholarships external to Duquesne, but located within the US that are eligible to international applicants. We also have this. So this is, if you have your phone handy, I would go ahead and take a shot at this QR code. These are 2023 scholarships and fellowships that do not require US citizenship or legal permanent residency. So once again, there's a lot of different scholarships out there, and you have to be exhaustive in your search of these. It's very much a numbers game. I would strongly suggest that you apply to every single thing that's possible. So let's just look at an example. So this is an example from a Hispanic scholarship here in the US. This is from 2020, but I thought it was a good example. So what you're going to want to first look at is, and these are things when you're looking at scholarships, this is the way to go about it. First, get a list of scholarships and then start going through and asking these questions. What is the due date? Okay, so the due date on the Hispanic Scholarship Fund was February 15th in 2020. What's the award? The award was anywhere between $500 and $5,000. You'll want to look at, what's the academic level? This scholarship was available for high school seniors, students that were already in their undergraduate study, as well as graduate students as well. It was good throughout the US. It's good for any field of study. You can look at the eligibility there, must be Hispanic heritage, must be, either planning to enroll or enrolled in a 4-year university or graduate school. And if you look at the GPA, and very often your GPA is going to be linked to the amount of scholarship that you'll be able to get, and if you're eligible. So the GPA requirement for this particular scholarship was 3.0 for high school, 2.5 for college students. So yeah, so these are the questions that you want to be aware of. You want to make sure you're looking at due date, where, region is where that would be eligible for, the field of study, and the eligibility criteria. Another way to help fund your university study is working on or off campus. So F1 students, which most of, I think our audience will be, if they come to the US, they'll be under an F1 visa. That allows you to work on campus for up to 20 hours per week. F1 students are not allowed to work off campus. They are only allowed to work on the geographic framework of the campus. So 20 hours a week. That number can be 40 hours a week when schools are not in session. So during breaks or maybe over the summer, you can up that to 40 hours per week. These jobs usually pay somewhere around the neighborhood of about $15 an hour, and they entail working at places like maybe the library, the bookstore, doing clerical work within an office, or maybe working food service. Now, these jobs are not unlimited. There's not an endless source of them. So what I tell students is, you need to apply. If you think you're going to need to work on campus to help fund your education, the day you get here, you need to start investigating this. Now, the good thing for internationals is we bring internationals in 2 weeks prior to domestics. So internationals are usually the first people on campus, and you will have first crack at those jobs. When students come to me in October or November and they're telling me like, hey, I'm struggling a little bit financially, I'd like to get an on-campus job. I'm like, usually by that point, October, November, those jobs are all taken up. So if you do think that part of your equation for funding your education here in the US is working, you need to look at this right away as soon as you get to, as soon as you get to campus. You will not be able to secure these jobs prior to arrival. You'll have to get them upon arrival.
Mike, I just wanted to add something that I hear
Please.
from a lot of students.
Yeah.
So the jobs that you get here on campus are paid to you in a paycheck, which is great. So you can spend it on what you need. But we cannot calculate this job on your I-20. So this, even if you're planning to work, it cannot be added to your finances on your I-20. And I get that a lot. So you do need to be able to show all the financials in a bank statement when you're applying for the visa. And then the job is kind of extra, because what you don't want to say at the visa interview is, I need to have a job in the United States to be able to help fund my education. That's not going to work at all. So this is extra. This is a government program that's encouraging you with CPT and OPT to get experience and hopefully make money. We want you to make money. And then the on-campus job is just to help with your extra expenses. But if you're relying on that job to make ends meet, which means to make your budget, that's not going to be a winning approach.
Right. I think, as I said, you're not able to secure these on-campus jobs prior to arrival. This is something you're going to have to obtain after you arrive on campus. And Sarah is absolutely correct. If you're going into your visa interview with ambiguity as far as finances, that is not going to help your chances of obtaining a visa. So I would not bring up hypotheticals as far as financing, which before you arrive, getting a job on campus is a hypothetical. Once you arrive and then you can turn that hypothetical into a reality. But it's not possible to secure on-campus work prior to arrival. So yeah, so Sarah did talk about CPT and OPT, and let me talk about those quickly. So CPT and OPT do allow you to work off campus. These are immigration programs. CPT is applicable while you are still studying prior to graduation. OPT is after post-graduation work. So what CPT allows you to do is be involved in a paid internship. How this process works is you will seek out an internship, you will get an offer letter from the company, you will bring that letter to your advisor who will approve it. And the point of approval is whatever that job is has to match your curriculum. That's why it's curricular practical training. If you're studying engineering and you get a job working at a marketing position, those jobs will not match. Okay, so whatever that job offer is does have to align with your program curriculum. And like I said, those jobs, those allow you to work off campus and in an internship and be paid for that internship. OPT, similar type of process, but for after you graduate. And as you know, F1 visas, students upon graduation are allowed to remain in the US for 1 year, work for an American company, gain some valuable experience, and earn some money. If you're in a STEM project or in a STEM program, then that is a 3-year stay back. So these are 3 ways. So really the CPT and the on-campus will help you while you're in school. The OPT, the advantage is if you have incurred some debt along the way in funding your US education, OPT can help you recover that and pay down your debt before you leave the US. Okay, so a lot of what I've talked about really has to do with undergraduate funding, but let's talk about graduate funding. As I told you, our office, the Lieberman Scholarship, is only available to undergraduates. Graduate funding often comes from, or almost exclusively actually comes from, the graduate department. So within whatever school you're at, if you are a graduate student, you might want to reach out to your department and see what scholarships are available within their department. Okay, usually those scholarships are based on both need and merit. So I would strongly encourage you, if you are a graduate student, to reach out directly to your program of study and seek out these what opportunities might be available there. There's also a research assistant positions for grad students. Research assistants are paid a stipend, and they, a typical research assistant might be a lab supervisor job. So this is also available for grads, as is teaching assistant. Teaching assistants are usually paid a stipend prior, or a stipend to teach a class or assist a teacher in a university class. And finally, there are graduate assistants. Graduate assistants receive tuition remission. It can be anywhere between 3 to 12 credits. And what we get from that is we get you to help us with whatever academic services the program provides. So for instance, in our office, we have our graduate assistant is a student from Hyderabad, India, and we supply that student with 9 credits of tuition a year. And in exchange for that, he gives us 20 hours of work. So basically his 9 credits cover his tuition, and then he still has to cover his living expenses. So yeah, so for graduate, and with the graduate funding, I can also tell you a lot of these positions you're able to secure these positions prior to arrival, and you can list these as funding sources when you're seeking out your I-20. Okay, so just to sort of recap here, different ways to finance. You're going to have to look at your own personal and family contribution. Then you're going to have to look at financial assistance that is available in your own country. Study abroad possibilities. Look at financial assistance available in the US through the US government. And then also look at, sort of linked to that, are external scholarships. And when I say external scholarships, I mean scholarships outside of the university, whether that's Duquesne or any other university. You'll also want to explore working on and off campus. And for grad students that are joining us today, you'll want to look at graduate funding. So just a few other points I want to make before I sign off here is we get a lot of questions about FAFSA. International students are not eligible for FAFSA. So if you are really filling out a FAFSA form, you are wasting your time, okay? FAFSA is a federally funded program, and thus internationals are not eligible for it. A couple other points I would tell you is we do not do the CSS profile, okay? So we get a lot of students calling us, asking us, hey, can I have a waiver for the CSS profile? We do not use the CSS profile to scholarship students. We base, at the undergraduate level, we base scholarships on the application materials. We have studied the CSS profile, and we think the way we do it is more generous, provides the student with a more generous award than they would get utilizing a CSS profile. And it's also much more timely. The CSS profile sort of bogs down things. It takes a while to, go through all of those applications. And we think the way that we're doing it now, once again, is not only more timely, but we think it's more generous as well. One other thing I would tell you is, do not reach out to the Office of Financial Aid, at least at Duquesne. The Office of Financial Aid only deals with domestic students. They do not handle anything with internationals. And what's going to happen is, when you reach out to financial aid, they're just going to forward it to our office here in Global Engagement. So if you do have questions about finances, you should reach out to the Center for Global Engagement. You can reach out to Intel Admissions at duq.edu, or you can reach out to me directly, and I'm glad to, either direct you in, place where you might need to go, or to answer your question directly myself. So yeah, so there's my contact information. Once again, my name is Mike Burke. That's my email. You should feel free to contact me. I am not so important that I will not write you back. And so at this point, I know there's a lot of questions out there. So Sarah, can you moderate the questions? Is that possible?
Sure. I'll give students a little time to start putting their questions in the chat. One of the questions that I did answer a couple times, both publicly and privately, for students was about Empower or just loans in general. So as an international student, you have to understand, if any of you have banking experience, banks like to make sure that they are going to get their money back. So if you are an international student coming to the United States to study, most banks will say, I have no way to get my money back from this student because they're from another country. They're not going to stay in the United States to pay it back. So that's why getting a loan is not easy as an international student. So many students ask about loans. Definitely, we understand that, as Mike mentioned, many students in the United States take out loans. You are limited as an international student, but I'll give an example. There's a company called Empower that we have seen students get loans from, but that is limited. So you have to graduate within 2 years of taking the loan with Empower. And of course, they have to approve you. So there's nothing saying that they have to give you the money. So you have to work with them to get the Empower loan. And then that would only be fulfilled once you're enrolled in Duquesne and have a bill. So the Empower loans, we do see that's mainly at the graduate level we see, because of that requirement that you must graduate within 2 years of taking the loan. So if I see a question also, if I get a scholarship from Empower, will I be alerted by Duquesne? So we don't get any information from Empower. Just, be aware, when you're working with an institution to get funding, you're working with that institution. When they distribute the funds to Duquesne is when we get involved. So we are not involved with any of the funding with outside sources. So just so you're aware, we're not able to assist you in that process. It's up to them because they're assuming the risk. And we are not able to issue loans at Duquesne University. So Duquesne does not issue loans. Any type of funding that you're going to be getting from Duquesne is just a grant or a scholarship. It's not a loan. So yeah, Mike.
I'm sorry, Sarah, go ahead, finish. I'm sorry.
I'm finished. Yeah.
Okay.
I was just
So I
going to
was
read the
just gonna
next
say,
question, but
I think this is part of where it starts at home, right? If you're thinking you're going to come to the United States and be able to secure educational loan, that is unrealistic. That is, probably not going to happen. So if you think a loan is part of your entire financial equation to help fund your US education, that begins at home. And I would tell you, like Empower is, so with Empower, as Sarah said, you have to be within 2 years of graduation. So you would not, if you're an undergraduate, you would not be eligible for that until your junior year. And what I would just caution you as, and we see these cases, is be very careful of predatory lenders. There are lenders out there, within your own country that your terms of your loan will not be favorable, and people get excited like, oh, here's the money I need, but you have to look at what's the payback terms, and please be very careful about that. We know that students have suffered from this before, so really look, if you are looking at a lender, ask about, look around about that lender, make sure that lender is reputable, maybe find out if there are any testimonials or reviews of that lender as well.
yeah, absolutely. We have a question. Can I apply to other scholarships from Duquesne on sophomore, junior, senior year? Or the only scholarship that I will ever get from Duquesne is the one that is from the freshman year?
So there could be some scholarships that will be available for you while you're going through your, like, say you have a very high GPA and you're looking for something, maybe your junior year. Those kind of scholarships would usually come from the department and not from the university as a whole. And I would say, don't count on that. That would be, those are very rare. The university is, they're, while we are a nonprofit, they are a business at the same time. And, money is tight for education right now. There's a lot of need out there. So I would say my answer to that question is yes, that is a possibility. It's probably not a probability. And I would look, instead of looking to Duquesne for those kind of opportunities, I would look at like those external sources that I listed in an earlier slide.
Yeah, correct. I mean, you can continue to apply for scholarships the whole time you're at university, but if relying on only Duquesne is going to really, really limit that. And the more likely you will be to succeed is if you look elsewhere. So another question related to scholarships. So a student has a graduate assistantship and they are looking for accommodation available for people like me. I'm guessing they mean included in the graduate assistantship. So you need to read the outline of your graduate assistantship clearly. I think that's a big tip we see here at Global Engagement. Students might get funding for their tuition and they don't realize that they're responsible for housing, or they may get funding for a certain amount of years and then they stay and they don't finish the program, and then that funding runs out because it was only given for a certain amount of years. So the short answer is, unless your letter indicates that you're getting money for housing or for whatever, then it would be no. There is no option for free housing. Of course, we have housing available on campus for students that is paid, and we can assist you to find outside housing as well. So another question about the loans: how is it possible to fund my whole education? Is the job on campus enough?
No.
If a loan is not possible, and I'm guessing that there's not a budget.
Yeah, so I think you need to, I think in this example, Sarah, this student needs to, it is not realistic to expect an on-campus job to fund your entire education.
Right.
That is, my answer to that is pretty flat out no. That is not a realistic expectation. The on-campus job is part of the equation. Like I said, you cannot depend on one source of funding to help pay for all of your education. That is unrealistic. As I told you, my daughter, American, she had funding from 5 different sources when she went to school. So to get those 5 different sources, she probably filled out 25 different applications. So then when I talk about it's a numbers game, this is what I'm talking about. You need to fill out application after application. Everything that you are eligible for, you need to fill out. To depend on one source of funding, especially an on-campus job, no, that will not work. That will not pay for your education.
And I think the most important thing is you won't be able to get a visa.
There's that as well.
Yeah, you can't get a visa with that because you have to show that you have the funds to be able to come to the United States. And if you're relying on any type of employment or any resources that are not definite, then that means you can't get a visa. So another student is asking,
Sarah, I'm going to interrupt for just 1 second, just while you're on that, before I forget about the visa. And I'm so sorry for interrupting you.
Sure.
I just want to say about the visa as well. Sometimes we'll have students, so they'll be showing us bank statements from relatives, and they'll maybe have 5 different relatives supplying bank statements to help them fund their education. That will not play well when you're trying to get your visa. I think anytime you have more than 2 sources of funding from yourself, that raises question marks, and I think your chances of getting a visa go way down. I'm sorry to interrupt there, Sarah, but I just wanted to add that fact.
Yeah, it's responsible that you need to have a plan in place to pay for your education. And that is what they are looking for in the visa interview for sure. And we have a video about visa interview tips on our YouTube channel, which I'm going to plug again at the end. So the students kind of related these 2 students' questions. One is, would a graduate program offer scholarship for international students? And does the Lieberman scholarship cover one's whole undergraduate? So for the Lieberman question about undergraduate, no, it does not cover your whole tuition. And related to the graduate, it's kind of a similar answer. It's very important, and I think Mike touched on this well, you need to be doing the research when you're looking at schools. If you don't know what the tuition is before you apply, that's a problem. You need to have all this information ahead of time because you need to know what your budget is and what the cost of the program is. To be relying on the funding only from Duquesne is going to be a long shot. As Mike put that number, it's 0.1% of students that get full tuition. So it's really important that you know the numbers before you apply. And so the Lieberman is not going to cover your full tuition. And then you're also responsible for housing. So you need to have that in your budget. At the graduate level, there are some programs that offer full tuition in a graduate assistantship. You may have to pay for your own housing. But if you don't know what's available for the funding, then that's something that you need to be doing research on. Mike, do you have any other comment on that?
No, it just once again, I mean, it just goes back to this idea that that a full scholarship in the United States is very much a dream. Okay. Now, listen, I think a US education is a very worthwhile dream, but like a lot of dreams, it requires hard work. And if you think that a US university, I'm not just talking about Duquesne, I'm talking about all US universities. If you think a US university is just going to hand you a full scholarship because you've asked for it, that is not a realistic approach to studying in the US. So I can tell you some schools that do offer full scholarships. There are schools like Michigan, Harvard, Yale, Duke. Okay. So their acceptance rate to those programs are probably around 5%, maybe even less. So these are really super competitive schools that are super expensive, where, yeah, okay, they'll offer a full scholarship here and there, but first of all, you better be outstanding. I mean, I'm talking about having an SAT score of between 1,500 and 1,600, having a GPA of 4, like a 3.5. You cannot, I mean, I know this is a very good, and we love to accept students with 3.5 GPAs, but when you're thinking about full scholarship, that's probably not going to do it.
Right. And at the graduate level, you need to be having all the tests ready. So you need to have your GRE or GMAT. You're not going to be able to qualify for those scholarship or graduate assistantship opportunities unless you prove that you are a very excellent candidate. And part of that is the testing to really show a complete excellent student. So again, that really comes down to the research that you need to do. You need to approach the applications just like you would approach putting in the time for a job. As Mike said, writing these scholarships, when you think about it, putting in the effort to apply for a lot of different scholarships or putting in the effort to study for a test that can result in your funding increase, that's worth the time. Definitely. You might make $200 to $500 an hour for the amount of time you put in to apply for a scholarship. So you really need to put in the time as well. We're definitely here to support you, but we want to give you a realistic approach, and a lot of that work is homework that you need to be doing as well in your spare time. Any other questions? I think this was a great conversation today. We had so many students joining. So I thank you, Mike, for taking the time to talk about this. It's such an important topic, and really encourage our students to look at this and look at these opportunities, because there are opportunities out there. The purpose of this is definitely not to discourage you in any way. It's to encourage you to really take advantage of the other opportunities that are out there. So really take away that from this presentation, please. Any questions about your I-20s that you need, you can send to me directly. We're not going to be addressing those in this webinar. Also, the other topic I'd like to just touch on at the end, if you send us an email, Mike, myself, and Intel Admissions, we kind of all get the same emails. So if you send it to one, you don't need to send it to the other. We'll be happy to help you, and sending it multiple times, you're just going to kind of take away some time for other students. Mike, any closing remarks?
Yeah, just one other thing about the emailing is, do not write admissions@duq.edu. This is just like I said about the financial aid office, only deals with domestic students. The same is true with admissions. You want to write to Intel Admissions or to Sarah or to myself directly. When you're writing to admissions or to the financial aid office, all they're doing is pushing it back to us on our side. So it's, in terms of efficiency, it's much better to just write us directly. And yeah, once again, I think Sarah hit the nail on the head. We're not being discouraging here. We're trying to be encouraging and give you a roadmap on how to fund your education. So yeah, and it's very much about you have to get a mindset of it's not going to be one source. It's going to be multiple sources. And what we talk about in the US is stacking funding. So you're getting funding from maybe 3, 4, 6 different sources, and you're stacking those different awards to help fund your education. So yeah, once again, thanks so much for joining us. This is actually the first time we've run this particular webinar. The turnout has been fantastic, and we know this is, a question on a lot of people's minds. And when Sarah and I were talking a month or so ago, we said we need to run a webinar on this and address this situation. So thanks,
Yeah.
everybody.
And there's a lot of questions in the chat about where this is going to be uploaded. I have put in our tag in YouTube at International Duke. So we upload these videos to that channel. You have videos on visa tips, next steps we're just uploading now. So all those videos are there for you on demand to watch. It takes a little bit of time. You can imagine how many times you email us. We get that by about times 2,000 because we have a lot of students. So it does take a little time for us to get the videos uploaded. We will get them uploaded, and then I will email you if you signed up for this with the link. But do know that we have a lot of videos on our YouTube channel at International Duke, so you can check it out. And we'll get you this, and the PowerPoint will be listed in the link for the YouTube channel. So you'll have these links as well. So I'll try to get this out as soon as possible because I know students, you really need this information, excuse me. So once again, thank you to Mike. Thank you all for joining. We really look forward to meeting you this fall. Or summer, I guess. Some of you might be coming right away. So keep in touch with us. Let us know if you have any questions. We're a friendly group, and we'll be happy to work with you. So thanks again to everyone.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks, everyone.